The Yu-Gi-Oh! Trading card game is one of the most strategic and intensely gratifying card games out there, rewarding players with innovative deck building, shrewd technical play, and boundless game knowledge. However, new and aspiring players still face arguably the biggest barrier to entry for competitive play, the extremely steep price points for the most powerful cards available. But what if we tried to remove that barrier? In this series, we're going to be maximizing the value of every penny at our disposal to see how well we can perform on a constrained budget. Each season, we'll be investing a baseline of $50 USD into an affordable deck core comprised of the most cost-effective singles on TCG player. For just an additional $10 per week, we'll continually expand on that core, transforming our build into the most competitive deck possible. Welcome to Rise of the Budget Duelist. Alrighty everybody, we are back after a bit of a long hiatus with Season 2 of Rise of the Budget Duelist, and I am super excited to be resuming physical real-life content again. It's been quite some time since I've been able to do that for you guys, but hopefully you guys are just as excited as well to be tuning in to Season 2 for this series. A lot of you guys have been requesting me bringing this one back, and I've been wanting to, and now that I have the chance to, we are going to be diving straight on into it. So you guys did actually get to vote on the community tab poll a couple of weeks ago when I asked you basically which deck you guys want to see me pilot, and the deck that actually won was Phantom Knights, which is very, very exciting for me personally because I've been meaning to pick up this deck for quite some time. It's been in the back burner, but finally getting a chance to actually learn the ins and outs of it firsthand is something that I very much look forward to doing. And so right now I'm not the most experienced pilot of this deck, so definitely feel free to leave any constructive criticism or feedback regarding tactical player deck building in the comments below. I'm always looking to improve, and that's kind of the point of the series. But additionally, if you guys are kind of unaware of the specific rules for this series, I will have linked in the description box below sort of the introductory video that highlights sort of the nitty gritty. So if you want to read more in depth, feel free to do so. But this is going to be the week 1 build. This is going to be $50 or less, and we have a long ways to go before we reach the modern DPE scythe builds with a fully fleshed out extra and side deck as well. But yeah, this should be pretty exciting. So let's get started without further ado. First up, we're going to start with the monsters. We got the best starter in the deck in the 3 copies of the Phantom Knights of Torn Scales. This card is amazing and reprinted in the Megatins of this year. This is a lot more accessible now. However, it still eats up a fair amount of our $50 budget, so we do have to keep that in mind. However, it does everything that we want for the deck. It sets up our graveyard, it brings itself back as a body, just super amazing card. And despite the fact that there goes almost 20% of our budget right off the bat, I think it is well worth it. Next up is going to be one of the better extenders in the 3 copies of the Phantom Knights of Silent Boots. Yeah, this is going to be obviously Silent Boots. It's very staple, able to extend if you have PKs on the board already and grab your access to your Phantom Knight spells and traps. Very solid. And because of the anatomy of our deck currently, I decided to actually up the PK ratio a bit from what is standard. So I'm actually going to be playing 3 copies of Cloak instead of the normal 2. This is just because I want to be opening Phantom Knights as much as I can, just so I'm not as reliant on things like Rusty resolving. And so this helps us get into the engine more easily, as well as grind, since we don't necessarily have access to cards like Levier just yet. Yeah, a lot of things actually did not make the budget, so this should be a pretty interesting week 1. Next up, we have not 1 but 2 copies of the Phantom Knights of Ragged Gloves. Again, this is just more ability to grind in later game scenarios, which I anticipate that I'll find myself in quite a bit. And then we have the 1 copy of the Phantom Knights of Stained Greaves. This card is very solid as well, just being able to get more bodies out of your hand, or just summoning itself if we were to have access to things like Silent Boots. So that is going to be it for the Phantom Knight ratio. Next up, we're going to move into some of the other extenders. So this is actually one that I kind of took from JY Sharif's recent 60-card chopping list. But we're not going to be searching Fusion Destiny with this. However, we're going to go for the Predaplant Orphis Scorpio, as well as the 1 copy of the Darlingtonia Cobra to search off with it. We're going to grab Instant Fusion with this card just so we can get more level 3 access into both Carabini as well as the Rusty. So that's kind of the reason this is here, and I feel like if we don't have Tour Guide yet, which is again slightly out of budget, alongside the Burning Abyss names as well, this is one of the next best things we could go for. Yeah, there is no Graph Seer in this build, so this is going to be a bit painful to start things off. It's a lot more bare bones than like the week 1 Burning Abyss build of last season, but that kind of makes it more fun for me. I feel we have a lot of room to expand from here. But yeah, we have more extenders. We have 3 copies of Kagemucha Knight. Thankfully, this got reprinted in the most recent Maximum Gold El Dorado. Otherwise, this card was actually approaching several dollars. So thankfully, we can now fit it into the week 1 build. And then the last extender is going to be the 2 copies of Psychic Tracker. Wielder's, again, a little bit out of budget, as is E-Telly. But yeah, these are just free bodies to get on the board to help make Carabini easier. And the last monster of the deck is one that is going to be our very, very interesting surrogate for the Burning Abyss names, and that is going to be Ejim Sabers. So this card in the graveyard allows you to summon itself back as long as you stack a card from your hand to the top of your deck. It doesn't actually banish itself when it leaves the field, which is nice. It's just free body every turn if you manage to have the resources for that. So basically, this is what you can send off Carabini to get into your Rusty. Obviously, you're not going to get the floating abilities of the BAs, but this is a decent enough replacement, at least for these early stages of deck building. So that is going to be it for the monsters. There should be 22 of them. Now for the spells, we have consistency tools. So we have Rhoda, we have Foolish Burial, which is not standard in PK, but I feel like in the absence of things like Emergency Teleport, like I mentioned, we really want just more ways to push past certain hand traps. So Foolish Burial is probably one of the best means of doing so, especially with the higher PK count in this build. We have the Instant Fusion, of course, to search off the Predaplant stuff. And even if we just hard draw this, it's fine. It just ends up being another extender. We have 1 copy of Reborn. Again, not standard in this deck, but I feel like we could use all the, Saki 1-ofs to gain the edge. If we, for example, manage to take our opponents like Enforcers, for instance, that could be pretty useful for us. So that is it for that. And then we have the Phantom Knight Spells and Traps next. So we're actually playing the 1 copy of the Phantom Knight's Rank of Magic Force. This is because I am playing the Dark Rebellion and Dark Requiem package in the extra deck, just as a means of getting a pretty powerful win condition on the board. Obviously, it's not a great card to draw by itself, but it is a pretty solid tool. So I figured I would test this out at minimum, and it's one of the cheapest options. Next up, we have the 2 copies of Fog Blade. We could not fit 3 into the build, unfortunately. It is what it is, but yeah, this card, super, super solid. I anticipate I'll be missing this a lot. And there also, I'm just going to say right now, is no Shade Brigandine. So we'll see how things go without these extra PK spells and traps. We have to kind of make do instead with the 1 copy of Phantom Knight's Sword and the 1 copy of Phantom Knight's Wing. So yeah, this is definitely very, very interesting for sure. Again, these are usually not standard. Like maybe one of these, like the 1 wing maybe is standard. Like it's not like uncommon to see 1 wing, but both of these definitely is not standard. So we're just gonna have to see how this pans out for us. And then the rest of the deck is going to simply just be defensive cards, the best ones that I could come up with for this slot. So we have 3 copies of Book of Moon. I want things that are just decent going first and going second. And the best category for those types of cards is hand traps, but hand traps just generally tend to be too much. Even like the cheaper ones that people think of, like Effective Veiler, $2 a piece adds up very fast when you only have $50 to work with. So yeah, Book of Moon is what I settled with, and that's also why you don't see Forbidden Chalice in this build, because that card, believe it or not, is now above $2 as well. But yeah, next up is going to be Twin Twisters. This deck struggles against Mystic Mind, so having an out to that is pretty nice, and just at a local environment, just being able to out back row is pretty good. And then the final defensive card is one that is going to be pretty suspect, but it's the best thing that I could think of in this short window that I have between the remote dual ICS and locals, which is happening in a couple hours. So I decided to throw in Solemn Warning here. Obviously, this is not like synergistic with the deck or anything. It's not great going second, but I figured that having just more defensive cards going first, and this is like one of the cheapest options that is pretty high impact, was not that bad of an idea. So that is it for the 40 card Bane deck. This definitely has a lot of room to grow and improve, but that is the whole point. So moving on now into the extra deck, we're Link Monsters. We have the 1 copy of Carabini. This is like our setup for the majority of our deck, and we still want to turbo into this card. I made sure to prioritize this card as part of the budget because it is I think it is the most expensive card in the entire list. Next up is the 1 copy of Rusty, pretty self-explanatory. We have Nightmare Phoenix, which is pretty good. I mean, just out to back row generically, right? We have 1 copy of Nightmare Unicorn as well. And we have 1 copy of Zeroboros. This is kind of reminiscent of the week 1 Burning Abyss build. But I want to throw this in here just in case we wanted a big Link 4 boss monster to go into. So that is the option there. Next up for the Xyz, we have 2 copies of the Phantom Knights of Breaksword. This does pretty much everything that we want. Its extension, its removal, very, very solid card. We have 1 copy of Virtual World Shell Jaja, again, harkening back to BA a little bit. This is just the non-targeting, non-destructive removal of hard, problematic boss monsters to out. So this is pretty much what I went with. It's not the most amazing card, but it's also very, very cheap. Next up, we got some rank 4s, just to kind of play off a break sword. So we have Nightmare, Evil Swarm Nightmare, that is. One of my favorites, personally. This is one that is a very, very strong go-to in a lot of combo matchups. A Time Thief Retour, this card is obviously not as strong without Hcabe Brigandine, so that's something that I want to fix ASAP for next week, but still is a pretty good control tool. Next up, we have the Dark Rebellion package. So we have Dark Rebellion XYZ Dragon and Dark Requiem XYZ Dragon. This is, again, in tandem with the Phantom Knight's Ranked Magic Force. So this helps you get a lot of negations, as well as being able to trigger Rusty's pop effect on your opponent's turn, which is pretty solid. We have a copy of Raiders Knights to be able to ladder into Arc Rebellion XYZ Dragon, which is our OTK enabler. Obviously, we're not going to be able to afford Access Code Talker anytime soon. And finally, we have the best card in the game, which is our instant fusion target, and that is going to be Flame Ghost. This is a level 3 Dark Monster. Realistically, it doesn't have to be a Dark Monster necessarily, but I just wanted to make sure that it was like synergistic with Rusty if we need to use it as material for that. But you could probably get away with like cheaper or level 3 fusions if there are any. I think I looked up like Charbin the Fire Knight's a little bit cheaper, but yeah, this one obviously just works the best with the deck as is. So that is the week 1 of bare bones build for this deck. It's definitely rough around the edges. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it, but I think that this is a still pretty decent starting point, and we have a lot of potential to improve from here. You guys can spot immediate changes that we need to make. We need to like add the third Fog Blade. We need to add Hcabe Brigandine. We need to add the BAs. Levier is missing from the extra deck. There's just a lot of things that we need to take care of ASAP. But yeah, that is going to be the build. But yeah, before we get started with the matches today, just want to quickly thank my patrons for helping to support this content. It really takes a long time to produce, so I really, really highly appreciate it. And if you would like to support the channel as well, please do feel free to check out the Patreon as well. And also, if you want to have your own custom sleeves and playmats, definitely check out your playmat. We got the penguin sleeves. We gotta run them back. This time for the extra deck, just because I do like having the extra deck double sleeved quite a bit. But yeah, if you want custom design sleeves, definitely go ahead and check out your playmat and use the promo code SirEmanon10YP for 10% off your order. The link to that is also down in the description box below. So with all that being said, let's go ahead and just get started with these games without any further ado. Alrighty, so we are back with some real-life gameplay footage from locals for the series. It felt really, really great to just be in person again, just playing against some friends of mine I haven't seen in a few months, and nothing really beats playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Just across the table from somebody else. But yeah, this is going to be round 5 of Swiss up against Trap Eldritch, and this is unfortunately the only match that I'm going to be including in this video. Either the rest of the games are either just not great gameplay wise, or I had some technical difficulties on my end, so I do apologize for that, and we'll try and get that sorted out for next week. It has been a bit of a while since I've actually recorded real life gameplay footage, so thanks for sticking with me on that. But yeah, you saw we going first. Our torrent scales got negated by Imperm, but we have the extender in the form of instant fusion, so that is pretty good for us. We get to go in the Caribbean anyways, and because we have, I believe, a Stained Greaves in our hand, we do get to actually send a copy of Ancient Cloak off this Carabini instead of what we normally would, which would be an Edgem Sabers. And so this way we actually get to get further into our PK lineup, which bodes well for just resource management in general. So we get to search for Silent Brutes off the Ancient Cloak. This triggers the Torrent Scales to bring itself back from the graveyard. And now we have a Stained Greaves coming onto the field. So that is quite good for us. Also, to kind of make up for the lack of gameplay footage in this video, I will be including some combos that this current iteration of the deck can accomplish, just to see where we're at currently and how far left we have to go in order to actually make this more competitively viable. But yeah, we can turn the Stained Greaves plus the Carabini into Rusty, and then we can trigger the Rusty effect. So we get to set a Fog Blade and then mill a Ragged Gloves. So then we can special the Silent Boots that we just searched earlier off the Ancient Cloak to our field. And this allows us to go for a Breaksword play, and then Rusty Pop Breaksword, pretty standard stuff. And then we get to go ahead and bring back to Phantom Knights, and the extra Stained Greaves on our grave is very good because now we get to have the utility of both the Silent Breach Search and the Ragged Gloves to mill, so we get 2 extra disruptions that we normally wouldn't be guaranteed to have necessarily. So that's good. We get to grab another copy of a Fog Blade, and then you can see we're actually going for the Dark Requiem play. We're not going for Frogblade, rather. We're going for the rank magic spell, right? Because we are going for the Dark Requiem. This is something that I was consistently going for, and you could clearly tell I did not know the matchup. Otherwise, I would probably not go for this play up against Trap Eldritch. But yeah, I wanted to really just see how good this was. Right now, I'm recording this as I'm working on the week 2 build, and I can comfortably say that I made some changes from this week's build. But yeah, we get Kaiju'd, which is very, very unfortunate for us. Thankfully, again, we had the Ragged Gloves to send a copy of Famnite's Sword to the graveyard, so we still have the pop via Rusty. But he does also have the Cursed Eldland, which lets him get Golden Lord to his hand. And now I kind of have to hope that he doesn't hit one of my good cards. He goes for one of the blind sets. He knows the middle one is Fogblade, and he knows one of these two is the rank up spell, which he does end up hitting. But the other one, thankfully, was actually alive, and you'll see what it is in just a moment here. He sets 2 and actually likes not to use the Golden Lord to bring himself back from the graveyard. Not entirely sure what the reasoning for that was, but I would have been okay with it if he tried to just clear the Rusty, because in end phase I could just sword bring back the Rusty instead of what I do here, which is bring back the Break Sword to actually just try and hit one of these back row. So I know he just set a Scarlet off the Conquistador, and I hit another Conquistador, so because it's a hard one to return, he doesn't actually get more value off of it, and I have Torrent Scales coming back in the process, so lots of really good follow-up here. So now I know one of his sets is Scarlet, and so that means he has 1 disruption maximum, and so I'm feeling pretty comfortable. And best case scenario for me actually would be if that was a Golden Land trap. Right now I'm just going to try and accrue more resources before committing to the board more heavily. Go and activate Rusty's effect to mill and set. He goes for Walkero and then chaining to Scarlet, and here's where I reveal the other card that I had set earlier, which was Solemn Warning, baby. Solemn Warning in 2021, negating Scarlet Sanguine of all cards. But yeah, that's really solid for us because now we know he has no disruptions left, so we have free reign over the board here. We get to go ahead and search off of the ancient card that we just sent off this Rusty, and now we just get to try and go for game right here because we do have this Kaiju, which represents a fair amount of damage. So we're just gonna simply go for Break Sword into Rusty, pop the Walkero, and that should be enough for game right here. So game 1, pretty good. He opened a lot of Eldritch cards, so we were able to just kind of break past that. And even if he had Lord coming back, I still had ways to kind of play around whatever disruptions he might have had. So I think we were still favored even if he summoned back the Golden Lord on his turn. Now he's going first in game 2, and this is the classic set 4 pass. Very, very terrifying. Thankfully, even though we have no side deck, we are main decking Twin Twister. So we are fortunate enough to open up Twin Twisters right here. But he hits us with the Dark Bribe. So going 2 for 2 here, or I guess 1 for 1 at the end of the day, because of the extra draw that we get. We pitch Edgem Sabers, which is a pretty good draw, but the rest of our hand is not the greatest. We do actually have a second copy of Twin Twister right here, so we're going to go for it again, but this time he has Judgment for it, so we were just never resolving Twin Twisters. What can you do? We pitch a Famnite Wing right here, so we're actually not in the greatest spot because we don't have really good starters in our hand. So I'm going to go ahead and activate this copy of Edgem Sabers, and we're just going to see how far we can get. And then we're going to normal summon a copy of Silent Boots right here. And so I actually deliberate on if I want to just go into the battle phase right here and get some damage in, because he paid half for Judgment. And I figured that if he's committing this much to protect his 2 back row, those have to be some pretty good back row. So I definitely figured that those are just live traps. And so I would rather potentially go for the damage here, but I decided to try and push instead. And here we're going to go ahead and activate the Kiribini here, and then just send. I feel like this one is pretty safe, just because he could have just torrentialed me on the normal summon, and that would have probably been strong. Just because Boots searching wouldn't really have done much, and then I already used the Edgem Sabers and my normal summons, so my follow up was pretty limited there. I had Wing Engrave, but I mean that still wasn't really going to achieve a whole ton here. So I figured he didn't have Torrential, so I go for a mill of the Torrent Scales so I can go and try and bring back both the Boots off the wings and then the Torrent Scales off its own effect, but he hits me with the Ice Dragon's Prison, and that is a card that I did not respect at all. So I could have played that entirely differently if I had respected that card more. Feel free to let me know in the comments below if how you would have played that given the circumstances. The last card I had is a set copy of Solemn Warning, I believe. So yeah, if you have any ways it would have navigated that, please let me know, because I feel like there was definitely a better way to play around the Ice Dragon's Prism. Perhaps I could have gone for a like I could have gone for a search off of these silent boots and then trigger the torn scales there, and then like try and torn scales to pitch one. I mean, he could have still just specialed the torn scales to his field though, even without banishing my resources. So it wouldn't have been the greatest. So maybe there's a world, maybe there's not really a world in which I actually play past it. But yeah, he goes play past this to his turn. He goes into battle phase. He tries to attack over my Carabini. I use it as a protection effect to just send my warning instead. That's what ended up happening there. And then he just, main phase 2 goes for Cursed Eldland and then sends away my Carabini anyways. And then he again elects to not summon his Golden Lord, but he doesn't actually have any Golden Land trap access here. So, yeah, I guess, yeah, there's not really a whole lot he could have done in that front because all he had was just like ways into Eld Elixirs. But yeah, I don't draw anything good anyways. I'm on 0 cards. So like I do have the Edgem Sabers, but like I'm just trying to survive a turn to get maybe another play and hope that things work out from there. But you will see that that is not a viable game plan because we are actually going to lose this turn. So he pays for Curse Eldon again. He searches another copy of Golden Lord, and then here he activates the Lord effect in hand to send away his own Walkero. And then he's going to bring back the Lord from Graveyard, sending away his Curse Eldland. And he goes into battle phase. He attacks me for 6k, and then main phase 2, you guessed it, the boy, the Gustav Max comes down, and we will take the L in that one. So now moving to game 3, we are going first, and we gotta hope that we are able to set up a good enough board here. The problem is that we don't have a lot of very good options against backward decks right now, which is something that I definitely think that I need to try and address moving forward. But we actually bricked with this hand. I think we drew a Famknight Wing, the rank up spell. We set Cobra, which is, the Gardner or the Predaplant engine. It's kind of the price you pay sometimes to playing these cards. And then I can't recall exactly what the other 2 cards were, but I think we find out soon enough. He evenly matches us. I could have just kept those cards in my hand, to be honest, but I wanted to bluff, I suppose. But in the end, those cards were not really doing me many favors. So he's going to Lord effect, send away Cobra, and then he's going to activate Numeron Network, which is, we didn't see any of that in games 1 or 2. But right here, he's actually not going to make Utopic Zexal, but he is going to just link everything away into Appaloosa, which is functionally the same thing, given this current state. So I'm trying to recall right now what my cards in hand are. I'm pretty sure one of them is Monster Reborn, which, again, is kind of like it's not a card that helps you really in the early stages unless your hand's already really good. So that's like a card that obviously is not going to be staying in the build for very long, but right now I'm just playing it in place of other extenders. And now we are going to kind of just be thinking here, because I look in his graveyard and see like if maybe there's a way I can force an activation of Appaloosa so I can like revive his Golden Lord to attack over it, because it's on 32 right now. But I don't actually have a way to force an Appaloosa negate, so I have to kind of just go for it. I have Edgem Sabers. I'm pretty sure that was the last card. So I go normal Sabers, special the Cobra off Reborn, which obviously does not trigger because it has to be summoned by the effect of a Predaplant monster, and Monster Reborn is very much not a Predaplant monster. So we're gonna do our best. We're gonna link off in the Carabini here, and I figure like this is probably gonna resolve just because like it sends for cost. So Appaloosa is not gonna really negate it. He chooses to conk on Resolution here, which is, I feel like he could have just done it on summon and it would have accomplished pretty much the same thing. But I mean, he's in the driver's seat by a pretty significant margin. So I think this is like maybe where like Wings would have been good, like to maybe protect. Like if I was just able to set a card freely before making Carabini, and then like using Carabini's effects to protect itself. But still he has Appaloosa, so he's going to negate my Edgemp Sabers, and then he's going to negate my Cloak, and then that'll do it. So yeah, even if my Carabini was on board, I couldn't make Rest or anything. I revealed that I stacked a Cobra, or Scorpio. I think I drew Scorpio and Cobra together, so that sucked. But yeah, those are the games right there. Okay, so like I briefly mentioned in the commentary, I just want to show off a couple of combos that this deck in its current form can accomplish. Obviously, these are not going to be optimized combos or the most explosive or high ceiling that the current meta variants of PK are doing, But this is kind of just a cool little way to kind of like benchmark where we are at right now, and then we can look back upon this and see how far we've come. So this is going to be the Torn Scales combo with a blank for Edge and Sabers, and then pretty much any other PK name in our deck. Since we're playing, higher count of like Cloak and Gloves, for example, we are more likely to actually draw into these, which is pretty good. So pretty much any of these can work. You can still combo with just Torn Scales and like 2 blanks, but that combo really is just rank 4 plus 1 Fog Blade, which is not super great. So I figured we just showcase this one off for the sake of demonstrating a more flashy combo. So let's go ahead and say we start off with Cloak plus Torn Scales plus a random blank, which is pretty likely because they're both 3-ofs. 4 is technically Throda. So we go ahead and normal summon the Torn Scales. We can go ahead and pitch our Cloak, and then we can go and mill a copy of a Trap, just one that we don't need to use right away. And then we can go and banish this Cloak, and then we can search for our Silent Boots. You can see that like if we open a trap, we can just do it in the reverse order, and then Ragged Gloves can replace pretty much what we're missing. And then if we start with Silent Boots, we can just do this combo a bit differently, where we just special this right away and then use the Torn Scale later. But for the sake of the example, we can just go ahead and special out the boots that we just searched, link these two away into Carabini, and then activate Carabini effect. We could opt to send like a Ragged Gloves, for instance, here, which wouldn't be too bad, but we don't want to like banish our PKs super early in order to make Rusty. So we're just going to go for the Edge of Sabers, and then we can stack a card to the top of our deck for the Sabers to bring itself back to the field, and then we can just link these two off into our Rusty, and then we can activate the Rusty effect. So we can go ahead and set and then mill one. So we go ahead and set Fog Blade and then mill a copy of Ragged Gloves. And then we don't actually use the Ragged Gloves because we want to keep the Silent Boots engraved, and we need 2 of the PKs to be material for our rank 4. So we're actually just going to wing right here and then bring back the Ragged Gloves, which triggers a Torn Scales to bring itself back. And then you guessed it, we're just going to go for Break Sword, and then we can go Rusty to pop Break Sword, and then Affecting Graveyard to bring these 2 back. And then this allows us to go for rank 4 of choice. You can go for any of these 3, pretty much is fine. I guess for the sake of example, we can go for Dark Rebellion into Requiem, because you saw that that's what we were kind of going for blind in that example match that we showed off. And then finally, we can end off with the Silent Boots to search for the rank up spell. So this is effectively 5 interruptions, because during their main phase, we can go ahead, activate the rank up magic force, and then, whoa, that's not how that works. Thank you, Dueling Book. We're going to go ahead and fix this real fast. So this is going to be a pop off of Rusty, because we're going to overlay into our Dark Requiem Xyz Dragon. So this gets the pop. And then this is a 3 monster negations, which destroys the monster as well. And then we have Fog Blade 2. So that is pretty good for this combo. And then the other combo is just going to kind of be what happens if we open up the Predaplant combos. So let's go ahead and just fix up the hand a little bit right here. So this requires, of course, the Scorpio plus like a random monster to pitch, plus a copy of just anything that we need for Torn Scales to discard. So let's say we open like 2 Scorpio, for instance. So we can go ahead and summon Scorpio, send the monster away, and then summon out Cobra from deck. And then we get Cobra effect to search for Instant Fusion. And then here's where like it doesn't really matter, like I mentioned in the deck profile, if this is dark or not. Because like you could link these into Carabini and then use a Flame Ghost to make Rusty, or you could just do this first. Which is probably just better because you have an extra body now to protect your Carabini, just to play around like destruction type effects. So this is probably just a better way to do it anyways. So we can activate the Carabini effect. We can just go and get into our PK engine right off the bat. This is probably the best one to send in case you get hand trapped. That way you can just get more value for like next turn. So we're going to go ahead and link these 2 off for the Rusty. We're going to activate Rusty's effect. So we're going to send the Torn Scales and then just set whatever we want. So Fog Blade fits the bill pretty nicely. And then we can pretty much just go from the Cloak to search for our Silent Boots. And then we can go ahead and Torn Scales bring itself back, and then use the effect so we can go ahead and pitch our random blank. And then we can send to the graveyard pretty much whatever other PK that we don't really mind having as material. Then we're going to go ahead and do the same thing, special out Silent Boots, overlay these 2 into the Break Sword, and then Rusty to pop Break Sword, and then use the Break Sword effect to bring back these 2. And then we're going to do pretty much the same stuff as last time. We'll just go for some variety. So we'll go for Nightmare here, and then we can go and banish to grab another spell trap. So in this case, we can just go for a Fog Blade. So in effect, this could still be 5 interruptions because we still have like 2 Book of Moons. And then if Fog Blade goes to grave, if our opponent like links, for example, we can just bring back the break sword and then get another pop there. So these are just kind of the standard sort of combos that this current version of the deck is able to do. So we ended up going 2 and 3 at our first locals with this deck, and obviously it's pretty rough out here, but I think we actually have a pretty good baseline for where we need to improve, and it's pretty clear where the weaknesses are. So our objectives for next week, first up, we just gotta, fix the main deck. We definitely need to add in Shea Brigandine, the third Fob Blade. We need to try and fit in Graf Seer, though it might not be possible to get all of these in to the deck at once. And then we also need to try and find space for Levier, because that was a card I was missing for sure. And then we also need a side deck, as per usual. So those would be our main objectives. I also did not open my entry pack as well as my one prize pack off on the screen. I accidentally just opened them out of excitement because it's been such a long time since I opened packs. But I actually pulled a Great Emperor Penguin as a super, classic, right? It's so fitting. But yeah, actually, that is just around $2, which is the minimum threshold that I determined for this season to actually go and convert into prize money at 80% retail value. So that'll actually be factored into the budget next week. So you can kind of see that on the screen right here. But yeah, that's going to be it for this video. We're going to go and make a lot of improvements for next week, and I can't wait to see you there. So thanks so much for watching, and until next time, I'll catch you in the next video. See you guys.